So here we're going to talk about a reptile substrate for tortoises. There are so many substrates that you can buy commercially that buying the right one is quite important for the health and wealth of the tortoise. We use a simple substrate. It's made up of 50% sterilised loam and 50% play sand, which is the right mix for European tortoises. And here we've got Herbie. He's one of our rescues. He's 4 years old. He's very active, and he's just been cleaned out today. And you can see by the shade of the loam of the substrate that it's a lot more darker. And this one here, he's Perry also. He's just been cleaned out. He's having a munch on some milk thistle by the look of things. Hermans are generally a lot more messy in their cage. They soon trash everything and there's weeds and things everywhere. But yeah, they're relatively a lot more messy. Now here is George's enclosure. George is a Herman rescue. Sorry, he's a Horsefield rescue, and he's in the bath at the moment, having some water. And his bedding hasn't been cleaned out today, and it's a lot more drier because the heat lamp, which is a mix of D3 light and actual heat, will dry out the bedding a lot more. And as you can see, it's very fine and very dry, where this one was a lot more wetter. So you can see, as I say, the bedding we use, there are a lot more beddings which should be avoided. Alfalfa substrates, they're very dehydrating. They can have a lot of problems with respiratory, and they should be avoided. Cedar and pine chips are also shouldn't be used for tortoises. They're very toxic when they're warm, and they emit certain noxious fumes, and they can be fatal as well if ingested. Bark chippings you should only use with care. Again, if they're ingested, they can become fatal, but they're also a good base for mites and other parasites, so they also should be not really used. Newspaper, people do use newspaper. Yes, it's cheap, but under this heat lamp they can become flammable, and they don't offer any what we call microclimate for them. So stick to something which is cheap, readily available, and it's recommended on the Tortoise Trust website. Now, we all learn information from all various sources, and the Tortoise Trust organisation is one which we use a lot, because these guys, they spend all their time on research and they'll tell you what's best. And we also run a pet shop, a pet accessory shop, where we sell all the different beddings, but they're right beddings for right animals. And for tortoises, you really are still better just to go down to your local garden centre and buy a bag of sterilised loam and a bag of play sand. Now, the other purpose of what we're doing today is just to show you, after we've cleaned out the bedding and we've picked out all the poo, all the older weeds here which have dried up and they haven't been eaten, we need to make the bedding wet again, or damp, because it's, as I say, it dries out, it goes into a very fine powder which isn't great for the tortoises after it's dry. So to do that, we're going to use a sprayer. It's a pump capacity sprayer with air, so all we need to do is pull a trigger. We just charge it up. This is actually a Trixie one, 1.5 litre capacity. And then all we're going to do, struggle to hold the camera at the same time, but we're going to spray the water on, and as we're spraying it on, you can see the change in the soil colour as the spray hits it, and we're going to rehydrate the soil again. The great thing with sand topsoil mix is you determine, with the species of the tortoise you're keeping, you determine the mix. So for example, an Egyptian tortoise, they need a very drier climate, so you would use something like 70% top sand to 30% loam. We got European tortoises, so we use a 50-50 mix of topsoil and sand, play sand. And the other end of the scale, those who need a wetter environment, you would then use 30% play sand to 70% topsoil. And can you see, as I'm mixing this in with the water, it's becoming more of a clumpier environment. Now, we don't want it too wet, because having it too wet can encourage shell rot into tortoises, which isn't a good thing. And we don't want it too dry either, where it becomes too powdery. Again, it's dependent on the species of the tortoise you have, and really how fast it dries out. Because under this light, once this is done, it's good, but 3-4 days later, again, it's going to need spraying again. So just to give you an example there of how we do it, we use a sprayer and keep it moist. Your bedding, there's a lot of information on how often you should change your bedding. It should be cleaned at least every 7 days. Depending on the size and the amount of tortoises you keep in an enclosure would depend on how often it should be totally changed. Some people totally change it every year, some people totally change it every month. So you obviously want it fresh and clean. You want to pick out the poo regularly, but obviously you can't stop wee, you can't remove the wee, so total changes are needed. But yeah, depending on how much bedding you've got. Also, the bedding itself should be about 2 inches thick, so because lots of tortoises do like to bury. Now, tortoises are different. Horsefields generally don't bury themselves much, or mine ones don't, although tortoises do like to dig, where other ones we've got will like to bury. And anyway, so this is our video on substrate. Hope it's been useful for you, and hope we can do some more soon. Thank you.